Okay, so I want you to picture something for me. Picture the holy grail of fitness.
Mm-hmm.
You walk into the weight room. It's, I don't know, Monday, 6 p.m. It's packed.
The classic scene.
Exactly. And what is everyone doing? They're in the squat rack. They're loading up the bar, dropping deep into lunges,
Of course.
because that's the rule, right? If you want legs, if you want glutes, if you want to be fit, you squat.
That is the dogma. It's the absolute foundation of almost every single strength program out there. The squat is king.
But what if I told you that this stack of papers we have on the desk today, and we're talking a very fresh protocol, this is dated February 2026, what if it claims that for a specific aesthetic goal, the squat is actually the enemy?
It sounds like heresy, honestly. I could just hear the powerlifters screaming already.
Right.
But that's the premise we're unpacking. We're looking at the snatched method.
And this isn't just, do some cardio and hope for the best. This is a highly specific, I'd say slightly controversial, protocol founded by Christy Calendar Thompson.
Also known online as @FitnessModelGirl.
That's the one. And looking at her founder's manifesto and this anti-quad blacklist, this feels less like a workout plan and more like a demolition project.
Well, they actually use the term architectural revision.
Architectural revision.
And I think that distinction is really important to make right at the top. Most people train for fitness, to run faster, lift heavier, maybe live longer.
Sure.
This method, this is purely about visual engineering. It's about shape, not performance.
Right, and we need to define the look here, because snatched is usually just a vibe, but in these documents, it's almost a set of mathematical measurements.
Precisely. The goal is a silhouette with a very narrow, tight waist, full, wide hips, and this is the controversial part, muted quads.
Muted quads.
They want the curve of the hip, but they explicitly do not want the thick, muscular thigh that usually comes with building that hip.
That's a physiological contradiction, isn't it? I mean, usually to build the booty, you build the legs. You can't really separate them.
That is the general consensus in exercise science. But this method argues that you can, provided you're willing to completely abandon the laws of traditional lifting.
Okay, so let's get into the weeds. The documents talk a lot about the void, which, it sounds a bit like a sci-fi movie title, but they're referring to a very specific anatomical feature, the hip dip.
Right.
And I feel like this is something people obsess over in the mirror but don't really understand anatomically. What exactly is a hip dip?
It's a great question because there's so much misinformation out there on social media about this. The manifesto uses the clinical term depressio trochanterica.
Okay.
If you feel the side of your hip, you have the iliac crest, that's the top curve of your pelvis. Then lower down, you have the greater trochanter, which is the top of the thigh bone.
Right.
The dip is simply the space between those two bones.
So it's skeletal. It's just how your skeleton is built. If your bones are far apart, you've got a dip.
Correct. If you have a high pelvis and a wide femur attachment, you're going to have a dip. No amount of salad or treadmill running is going to change your bone structure.
Right.
And to be fair, the source material here, it does admit that. They acknowledge it's largely determined by pelvic width.
But they don't say, accept your body and move on, do they?
No, absolutely not. Their argument is that while you can't move the bone, you can fill the void.
Fill the void.
The strategy is to hypertrophy or, grow two very specific muscles that sit right in that depression. The gluteus medius and the tensor fasciae latae, or TFL.
Okay, so we have the target. Fill the dent. The traditional way to hit glutes is the squat, but you mentioned the anti-quad blacklist, so why is the squat forbidden if we're trying to grow glute muscles?
This brings us to the core philosophy of the method, and the part that I found really fascinating from a biomechanics standpoint, the quadriceps dominance paradox.
Paradox? That sounds serious.
It is to them. The documents present data from clinical electromyography, or EMG. Basically, they put sensors on muscles to see how hard they're working. They argue that when you're in a standing position, like a squat or a lunge, gravity is trying to collapse your knee. And to stop you from falling, your body reflexively fires the vastus lateralis.
That's the big muscle on the outside of the thigh.
Exactly. It's a huge, powerful muscle. The claim here is that in any standing movement, the quad is biomechanically positioned to steal the tension.
So it hogs the spotlight.
It does. So you think you're doing lunges for your glutes, but your quads are taking 60, 70, maybe even 80% of the load.
Wow. So you end up with what the founder calls a blocky look. You get stronger, sure, but your thighs get thicker, which visually makes your hips look narrower.
Right.
It's an optical illusion working against you.
It destroys the hourglass illusion. So standing is the problem. The Snatched method proposes a radical solution. You're not allowed to stand.
This is the closed kinetic chain kneeling concept, CKCK. I have to be honest, when I read kneeling only, I thought, is this serious? It sounds like something you'd see in a late-night infomercial.
I know.
But the breakdown of the physics in the manifesto is surprisingly dense. Why is kneeling so superior for this specific goal?
It all comes down to levers and torque. Imagine your leg is a lever. When you stand, that lever is long from your hip all the way to the floor.
Okay.
The moment arm acting on the knee is significant. Your quads have excellent leverage to extend the knee, so your brain uses them.
It's the path of least resistance. Your brain is smart. It wants to use the biggest muscle to do the job.
Exactly. Now chop that lever in half. When you kneel, you're grounding the knee. You've shortened the lever arm. The manifesto states that this reduces the moment arm to near zero, at least regarding the knee joint.
So you're essentially handicapping your own quads. You're putting them in a position where they physically cannot do the work.
You are locking them out of the conversation. By creating a fixed point at the knee, the source says you force the hip abductors, those side glutes, to generate 100% of the force to move the leg.
So there's no helper muscle available.
No.
It's isolation by subtraction.
That's a perfect way to put it. And remember, Christy Calendar Thompson was a certified yoga teacher for 20 years before developing this. That influence is all over it. She talks about neuromuscular isolation.
Which means what, in plain English?
It's just mind-muscle connection. When you stand, your brain is doing a million things. Balancing on your ankles, gripping the floor with your toes, stabilizing your knee. It's, noisy, the nervous system.
Right.
When you kneel, you remove the ankle and foot stability from the equation. The brain can stop worrying about falling over and just focus entirely on firing that one specific muscle in the hip.
Okay, so that's the theory. Let's look at the practical application. Because for the listener who goes to the gym and heads straight for the leg press, this is going to hurt their feelings. We have the anti-quad blacklist. These are exercises that are strictly prohibited if you're on this program.
It's a tough list for traditional lifters.
Okay, I'm going to read them out, and you tell me why they're banned. First up, traditional back squats.
Banned because of axial loading and knee flexion. It builds overall mass, including the thighs. Great for strength, bad for the snatched look.
Leg extensions.
That is pure quad isolation. It's the exact opposite of what this method wants. That builds that teardrop muscle above the knee. If you do these, you're actively fighting the protocol.
Heavy leg press.
Same issue.
Yeah.
It creates a blocky lower body structure. You're pushing a heavy weight, and your quads are the primary drivers.
And this one hurt me personally. Forward lunges. I thought lunges were the ultimate booty builder.
I know, but forward lunges are incredibly knee dominant. Think about the mechanics. When you step forward and catch your weight, your quad has to fire massively to decelerate you.
It acts as a brake.
It's a massive brake.
Okay.
And that braking action is a huge thigh builder.
So we've stripped away all the basics. The gym floor is empty. What are we actually doing?
Well, the manifesto outlines our ranked exercise suite. It's a hierarchy.
Okay.
And it's very specific. They've ranked these based on EMG activation of the glute medius. Rank 1, the gold standard, is the snatch sidekick.
And I'm assuming this is done kneeling.
Yes, kneeling. But it's not just, flailing your leg out to the side like you're doing aerobics in the 80s. The guide specifies internal rotation of the toe.
So you have to point your toe down toward the floor.
You do.
Why does the toe angle matter? That feels like such a tiny detail.
It changes everything. If you point your toe up, you open your hips and start using your hip flexors, the front of the hip. That's not what we want.
Right.
If you turn the toe down, you bias the posterior fibers of the glute medius. It isolates the side butt, essentially.
Rank 2 is fire hydrants 2.0. Now, I know what a fire hydrant is. You look like a dog peeing on a tree. What makes it 2.0?
The 2.0 is a pelvic tilt adjustment. The instructions say to utilize a 45-degree posterior tilt. So you tuck your tailbone underneath you before you lift.
That sounds cramping.
It is. But again, it's about preventing the lower back from helping. If you arch your back, you aren't using your glute. You're using your spine muscles to lift the leg. The tilt locks the spine, so the hip has to do all the work.
Got it. Okay, rank 3 is rainbow arcs. Sounds pretty. And rank 4 is gate pose pulses, which is clearly the yoga hybrid.
Right, and we have to mention the equipment. The Advanced Isolation Technology section talks about resistance bands, but there's a bold warning, all caps. Never place the band around the ankles.
But that's where everyone puts them. The monster walk, right. Band around the ankles, waddle sideways.
This method hates the monster walk.
Yeah.
They argue that putting the weight at the ankle creates a long lever that engages the TFL too much in a way that hurts the knee or just brings the quad back into play. They want the band strictly above the knee.
Closer to the fulcrum.
Exactly. It keeps the tension on the hip joint itself, minimizing stress on the knee.
Okay, so we're sculpting the hips, but the method is called the snatched method. And usually when people say snatched, they mean the waist.
Right.
The source says, a wide hip only looks snatched if the waist is tight.
This is the core revision. And it's interesting because they explicitly forbid weighted ab work. No weighted side bends, no heavy cable crunches.
Because that builds muscle thickness in the waist.
Right. If you hypertrophy your obliques, your waist physically gets wider. Muscles take up space. They want to avoid the box body.
So instead they focus on
the transverse abdominis, the TVA.
the internal corset.
Yes. It's that deep muscle layer that wraps horizontally around your spine.
Yeah.
The technique here is the core vacuum.
Now, bodybuilders have done vacuums for decades. Arnold used to do them. Is this the same thing?
It is, but the application is different. It's not just a pose. It's a breathing protocol they describe as creating an internal girdle. The idea is to train the TVA to be in a constant state of semi-contraction, pulling the organs in the waist inward rather than pushing them out.
So you're literally training your body to be smaller in circumference.
That is the goal.
This leads us to the part of the deep dive that I think is going to be most useful for the casual listener, even if they aren't going to spend their life kneeling on a yoga mat.
Yes.
We have a document titled Revision Alert: Why Your Elliptical Habit is Flattening Your Glutes.
The SALE method.
I feel like the elliptical is the safe zone. You go there when you're tired or injured or you just want to watch Netflix on your phone. But this report basically says we are all using it wrong.
They call the standard usage the quad dominant shuffle.
The visual breakdown is brutal. They have an image labeled incorrect. The user is leaning forward, gripping the moving handles, pushing with their toes, and I looked at that and thought, oh, that's me. That's exactly what I do.
It's what everyone does. But the source argues that form puts all the stress on the knees and quads. You're basically doing thousands of mini squats on your toes.
So how do we fix it? How do we turn this machine into a posterior chain sculptor?
There are 4 steps to the SALE revision. Step 1 is the sit-back lean.
The sit-back lean. Okay, describe that for me.
Instead of standing upright or leaning forward, you shift your hips back physically, about 2 to 3 inches. The cue they give is, imagine you're at the very top of a squat.
So your butt is sticking out a bit.
Yes. And what this does is it puts the glute medius under stretch tension before you even take a step. It preloads the hip.
Okay. Step 2, heel drive activation.
This is the game changer. You need to pull your toes up inside your sneakers.
Like wriggle them up?
Lift them off the insole, just slightly. The goal is to ensure every single downward stroke is driven 100% through the calcaneus, the heel bone.
Wow.
The source cites research claiming that driving through the heel increases posterior chain recruitment, so glutes and hamstrings, by nearly 40%.
That is a massive difference just by lifting your toes. It changes the firing pattern completely.
It forces the body to pull instead of push.
Okay, step 3. This one is scary. The hover grip.
This connects back to the core. You have to take your hands off the moving bars.
But then you fall off.
Well, that's why it's hard. You can place your hands lightly on the static center handles, or if you're advanced, you hover them completely.
I see.
The logic is stability. If you're leaning on the handles, your core turns off. If you hover, your TVA, that internal girdle, has to fire like crazy to keep you upright.
So you're doing a standing core plank while you do cardio?
Exactly.
And finally, step 4, high incline, high resistance.
They recommend an incline of 12 or higher, and the resistance needs to be heavy. The sensation described in the text is climbing through heavy sand.
Climbing through heavy sand. I like that image.
It shouldn't be fast. If you're spinning the wheels, you're using momentum. They want a slow, grinding push. The high angle increases hip flexion, which is the primary driver for glute growth.
It's really amazing how much thought has gone into modifying a standard piece of gym equipment. It really fits this whole theme of architecture.
Right.
You aren't just sweating, you are constructing.
And that mindset shift is explicitly mentioned in the Vault lifestyle schedule. The method tells users to stop exercising and start architecting.
Undo the damage of generic training. That's a quote from the manifesto.
It frames the body as a design project. You don't just go in and hammer away. You follow a blueprint.
Yeah.
And looking at the weekly schedule, the vault, it's very structured.
Let's look at that week. Monday is lateral activation. Makes sense. Start the week widening the hips.
Saturday is interesting. Peak hypertrophy, featuring the 100-rep challenge.
Yeah.
That is high volume. That is going to burn.
And Sunday is yin restorative, deep tissue repair. It's a very balanced approach. Effectively, you hit the muscles hard, then you recover.
But notice what isn't there. There is no leg day. There's no quad day.
No. If you do this right, your quads should theoretically shrink, or at least stop growing, while your hips expand.
It is a complete rejection of the strong is the new skinny trend that focuses on functional strength, like squatting heavy loads.
Yeah.
This is purely 100% about the visual outcome.
And that's the part I want to linger on for a moment, because it feels as for the last 10 years, the fitness industry has been screaming, function, function, function.
Right.
We want to be able to carry groceries, lift our kids, run for the bus.
And that is a noble goal.
It is. But this method says, that's fine, but do you want to look like an hourglass? It forces a choice.
It does. It highlights the concept of intent. Often, people go to the gym and just do movements without knowing why. They squat because they heard squats are good.
Right.
But if your goal is a very specific shape, generic movements might not get you there. This method highlights that biomechanics can be manipulated to change the body in very specific ways.
It forces you to ask, why am I doing this exercise? Am I trying to get strong, or am I trying to change my shape?
And those are two very different goals that might require opposite approaches. If you want to squat 300 pounds, the snatched method is terrible for you. But if you want to change your hip-to-waist ratio, the squat might be terrible for you.
It's a lot to process, especially if you love your heavy lifting. But the precision is undeniable. It's fitness as engineering.
It is. It's taking the emotion out of exercise and replacing it with physics.
Before we sign off, I want to leave the listener with a thought from the Founder's Manifesto. We spend so much time in the fitness world judging routines as good or bad. Squats are good, machines are bad.
But context is king.
Exactly. This method proposes aesthetic perfection through isolation. So the provocative question is this. If traditional fitness creates a functional body, capable, strong, durable, but this method creates a specific architectural look, are we moving toward a world where we treat our bodies less like machines and more like sculptures? Is the trade-off of functional strength for visual design the future of cosmetic fitness?
It's certainly something to think about next time you step onto the elliptical. Are you running or are you sculpting?
Absolutely. Try that sit back lean and see how it feels. And maybe, just maybe, try a workout without standing up. Thanks for diving in with us today.
Until next time.